Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode number 162 of Who's the Bossk, and we are going to be talking about the recently released video game entitled Star Wars Jedi Survivor. This just came out a couple, like 2.5 months ago at the end of April, and I just finished it last night. We're going to be talking all about it with a guest that I have not spoken with before, first-time guest. Happy to welcome to the show. He is the co-host of the Force Dyad podcast. Please welcome Obi-Sean is what he goes by. Sean, thank you so much for taking some time out of your week to come chat with me about Star Wars.
Well, thank you, Mike. I'm very excited to be here. I've been looking forward to our chat since you reached out last week. So I'm stoked to chat some Jedi Survivor tonight.
Awesome, me too. Yeah, super psyched to talk about this with you. But before we do that, I want to ask you about yourself. Tell me a little bit about your Star Wars podcast, the Force Dyad podcast. How did this get started? How long has it been going? And what can people expect when they tune in?
Yeah, so it's a podcast run by me and my buddy John. He goes by Jedi John on the podcast. We've been recording or putting out content now for a little over 2 years. May 4th, 2021 was our first episode release. And how it came about is, I'm sure how most Star Wars podcasts come about. Basically, you got best friends talking about Star Wars in their free time. So you're like, hey, why don't we, awkwardly talk to each other through spotty internet connections, and then put it out on the internet to be judged by on a weekly or every other week basis.
That sounds right to me. So tell me a little bit about the average episode of the Force Dyad podcast. What do you guys usually cover?
So we've been very fortunate since we started, because for the most part we've had either television shows or animated stuff, movies, to chat about. And so a lot of our content is centered around the shows and stuff. But in the downtime, such as now in between shows and whatnot, like on this last episode, we talked about the Star Cruiser news, some of the recent Ahsoka news. Me and John are both into the toy side of things, from a collection standpoint. So we have episodes on that. We've done episodes on the music of Star Wars. So we try and cover a little bit of everything, but when the shows are going, it's pretty heavy on that side of things for sure.
Yeah, we've been lucky recently in the last few years to get the volume of Star Wars content that we have, which from what we've heard, it might slow down in the next year or two, but we'll see what happens with that and how it will affect podcasters like you and I. I do want to mention we are recording this live via the Laughing Place YouTube channel. If you happen to be tuning in live, please comment along. We will be happy to address any questions or comments you may have, such as Alexander Lee said, hi, Alexander. Jeffrey Neese said, howdy, finally get to watch a live one for a change. Yeah, doing this at a different time than usual this week, but happy to have you here, Gio. And then Keith said he is excited to learn more about this video game. Great, we're going to be talking about that in a bit. But first, we have to do something called the 5 Star Wars questions. This is where we learn about my guests' Star Wars fandom, just kind of give us a baseline of what, entry level as to what you're all about when it comes to Star Wars. Are you ready for this, Sean?
I am ready. Okay,
awesome. The first of the 5 Star Wars questions. What is your earliest Star Wars memory?
So I'm in my mid 30s. So I grew up, with the prequel movies. But my earliest memory is actually a few years prior to that, when they decided to release the special editions back into theaters. So I went for a buddy's, 9th birthday in 97 to go see A New Hope. And so that's my first real Star Wars memory, especially seeing it in theaters. I know we had the old VHS box set at the house, so my parents weren't huge Star Wars fans, so I'm not entirely sure how it got into the house, but I know I had watched it prior to that. So I was really excited to see it in theaters. But yeah, seeing the special editions, seeing A New Hope in theaters at our local dollar show in '97 is my first true Star Wars memory.
And were you into it pretty much right away? Like it caught on with you, and it has been a favorite of yours ever since?
Yeah, I would say that definitely with the release of the prequels, they're in the late '90s and early aughts. I got into it more. It's funny how things have changed over the years, where being a Star Wars fan it's kind of hip, it's chic, it's whatever. Whereas being a Star Wars fan, when I was growing up, got called a host of names. But yeah, I would say from the beginning, with the toys, definitely the games. I remember playing Star Wars Pod Racer on our old Windows 98 PC as a kid. So yeah, definitely got bitten by the bug pretty much right away.
Awesome. So let's move on to number 2 of the 5 Star Wars questions. Which is your current favorite? Which would you consider your current favorite Star Wars movie or TV show, and why?
So I'm leaning towards saying the Clone Wars cartoon animated series is probably my favorite now, especially given what we got in the last 2 seasons between 6 and 7. But even the first 5 seasons are phenomenal from a storytelling perspective, especially considering the gapping we had between episodes 2 and 3.
Yeah.
What they did with Maul, I love that. We'll get to it in a little bit, but I love Obi-Wan and Anakin in that time that we don't get to see them be, awesome, right, so to speak, except for when they're fighting each other, which you don't like to see too much. So yeah, definitely Clone Wars is I would say is my favorite right now.
Now, would you consider yourself satisfied with what they did with season 7? They kind of called it like, okay, we're going to wrap this up with these last batch of episodes. I know that there are a bunch of stories that never got made. Some of them were made into comics and novels. But are you one of those fans that wants them to go back, Dave Filoni, to go back and fill in some of those gaps? Or are you pretty good with how the Clone Wars wrapped up?
So I would say I'm pretty satisfied with it.
Yeah.
I'm always worried about when they go back and tinker or add, and it kind of takes away from things. So I'm content with where they ended it, for sure.
Okay, cool. And I'm sure you're excited for Filoni. Well, we're going to talk about Ahsoka in a bit because we got the new trailer in a bit. So let's hold on to that. So number 3 of the 5 Star Wars questions: who is your favorite Star Wars character and why?
So mine, it's kind of in my name, but it's going to be Kenobi. Obi-Wan is my favorite character.
Yeah.
And it's really Ewan's. Not that Alec Guinness wasn't great, but we didn't really get him much. So growing up with Ewan as Obi-Wan, I really found myself kind of connected to his character. And reasoning is, he was kind of that weird Jedi in that, he was pretty book bound, right? Like he was kind of straight laced, but he had some leeway, at least as far as, certain things with Anakin, again, going back to the Clone Wars we saw in the cartoons and stuff like that. So, and then with the Kenobi series, seeing kind of his vulnerability, I feel like as a complete character, you kind of get the full arc with him. So Kenobi for sure.
So what did you end up thinking about the Kenobi series that we got last year?
Overall, I enjoyed it. The first couple episodes were a little slow, but the back half was really solid. And I liked the tone I think that they were trying to go for as far as his story arc and as he related to Leia and everything like that. And so, again, overall, I was pretty satisfied with it. Now, do I want them to do a season 2? I don't really know, because I don't know where you go from there. So I'm again, like Clone Wars, I'm kind of content with as much as I love Kenobi. I'm content with where they left it.
Let it be for a little bit, or maybe permanently. Keith said the actors of the prequels are finally getting their roses. Yeah, it took a bit for the generation that grew up with the prequels to become adults, and then everybody is embracing it now. So very happy to see, like you said, Ewan McGregor, Ahmed Best is getting the love Hayden Christensen. Okay, number 4. If you happen to live in the fictional Star Wars universe, where do you think you would fit in? What faction would you belong to? Some of the examples are the Jedi Order, the Sith, the Rebel Alliance, the Empire, the Bounty Hunters, the scum and villainy hanging out in the cantina, or anything else you can come up with. What do you think, Sean?
I'd like to think that I'd fit in with the Jedi to an extent, but knowing, I don't know. Yeah, I'd probably go Jedi.
Okay.
That would be my hope, but I'd probably end up like some side bit character.
Okay. Well, you could be a side character Jedi.
Yes.
They're not all main characters. The
Exactly.
Jedi. Yeah. But good choice. And the 5th and final of the 5 Star Wars questions is called Impression or Possession. This is where I ask my guest to either do a Star Wars impression or opt out and simply tell me about a favorite Star Wars possession they may own. What do you think, Sean? Which one do you want to do?
Can I do both? Can I give you
you absolutely can do both. We've had a few people do that in the past, so very happy to accept both answers.
So I'll just do a simple hello there from
Nice.
with Kenobi, and then it ties into my possessions in that I've got a couple signed pieces from Ewan. So I've got
Nice.
An episode 1 sort of saber that's signed by him, and then my wife, I love her. She feeds into my addiction. She got me a signed Obi-Wan Kenobi pop for Christmas a couple years back. So
amazing.
Yeah. So those are my 2 sort of prized possessions, but so it ties in well to all of my other answers tonight.
So have you gotten to meet Ewan McGregor, or did you just procure that the autographs through somewhere else? Or now you're going to show me a photo of you with him? Yes.
I did. So in Anaheim, this isn't creepy at all, right? It's not just on my shelf back here. But yeah, I got to meet him in Anaheim I guess that was last May now. So I didn't get an autograph because I had the others at the time, but
yeah,
I definitely splurged for that photo op, and it was a cool 5 seconds with him and pleasantries, and it was. I can't imagine how crazy it was for him with the drop of Kenobi at the same time. So
right,
yep,
yeah. Everybody I've talked to who paid for that meet and greet they were really satisfied. Like, he was very friendly. Did you feel like you had that same experience?
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to be alert, not overly exhausted as I'm sure he was by the end of the show.
Right.
Again, very cordial, very friendly. So I was very happy with it.
Sweet. That's awesome. Super happy that you got to do that. Okay, that's the end of the 5 Star Wars questions, and we'll move along to Star Wars headlines for this week. So the big news coming out of this past week, you were talking about the Clone Wars earlier, and a character that was introduced in that animated series is now getting her own live action series on Disney Plus. And we got a new trailer this past week for Star Wars Ahsoka, and we learned that 2 episodes will premiere on August 23rd, which is a Wednesday, on Disney Plus. How are you feeling about Ahsoka right now, Sean? Are you excited for this?
I am very much looking forward to it, especially after the last trailer. We got an extended look at a lot of things, a lot of good things to come out of it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the story that they're planning to tell. Can't wait.
Me too. I'm super psyched. I enjoy Dave Filoni's output. I think he knows, definitely knows Star Wars. He knows the lore. He knows the style. And I think he's, this is really the first. I mean, he's partnered obviously with Favreau. He's made a bunch of animated series, but this is really the first live action series that he's like spearheading on his own, I feel. So I'm very excited to see what he does with it. The only thing I would say that gives me a little bit of concern from these trailers is that it almost seems like it has a very similar story to the video game that we're going to talk about later. I don't know, but I guess we don't know too much about these red sabered Jedi that are coming out in Ahsoka. Like, I don't know. Do you think they're going to be very similar to the villain of this game, or do you think they have a different story?
So I'm thinking that they probably have a different story. I'm thinking, and John and I kind of talked about this in our last episode. But similar to how there are still Jedi remaining after Order 66, there are probably still Inquisitors left. Or are you talking about Balin and
Balin?
Yeah, so that as far as they're concerned, that's and we get the whole "I'm no Jedi, we're no Jedi"
right
in the new trailer, right?
Yes,
and yeah, as far as being kind of turned, or not turned, but
fallen to the dark side, or
fallen Jedi, right?
Yeah,
who have been coerced by Thrawn to do his bidding for him, in while he's over here somewhere,
right?
And so I agree. There's definitely some similarities to Jedi Survivor and stuff like that in that respect. And I'm curious to see where they go with the whole Sabine, Ahsoka, Jedi Padawan sort of thing that they dropped there. That'll be interesting too.
So speaking of Thrawn, what was your reaction when you found out that Lars Mikkelsen would be coming back? He was the voice actor who played the character in Star Wars Rebels. Are you a Thrawn fan? How do you feel about this actor portraying him?
I'm always a fan if they can make it work to have the voice actor reprise it in live action. I think that's why a lot of people, were hopeful maybe for Ashley, before Rosario was cast to do Ahsoka. But no, when it came out that it would be Lars, playing the role again, I'm all for it. I like Thrawn. Now, I will be the first to admit that I'm not as caught up on Rebels as probably others are. And so, but from the books I've read, I've read the first Thrawn book, and I'm reading Heir to the Empire now.
Okay.
But as a tactician and everything like that, big fan of his sort of methodical personality as it relates to that.
I was thinking about how this series is really obviously going to appeal to fans of Star Wars Rebels, and I was wondering how general audiences are going to receive this show, knowing that it may kind of rely on you having seen Rebels to really appreciate it. Do you have plans to? Now, you said you weren't caught up on the whole series, but do you have plans to try and get through the rest before this starts? Or
yes, I am in the middle of season 2 on my kind of rewatch, I guess, and we'll be headed down to San Diego here midweek for the convention. So I've got a nice 3.5 hour long flight that I will be binging episodes on. So hopefully by the end of the trip, I'll be well into season 3, leading, with a few weeks to spare.
Nice. I hope I run into you at San Diego Comic-Con. I'll be there as well. So very excited for that. And then let's move on to the next headline here. Oh, we found out there are new episodes. So this animated series, Young Jedi Adventures, premiered on May the 4th on Disney Plus and Disney Junior with 7 episodes. And then we're getting 6 new episodes in addition to that on August 2nd. And they said eventually there will be 25 total episodes from this first season. So they're just kind of like spacing them out a little bit. Have you watched any of that Young Jedi Adventures?
I have. I have a 4-year-old son, and so I've convinced him to, I've convinced him to watch it with me. And so I think we watched the first 5 or 6 episodes of it, and I thought it was, very approachable for kids. Well thought out. I personally really enjoyed it, actually. So
I enjoyed it too, and I don't have any kids, but I dug it. I said it reminded me kind of a Muppet Babies when I was growing up. That was my favorite cartoon, and this is kind of like Jedi Babies, but I got a kick out of it, and I'm looking forward to these new episodes. I know at some point they're going to Batuu. They announced this at Star Wars Celebration.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So they'll be visiting Batuu from Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. So looking forward to that as a Parks fan. But I guess I wanted to. So Young Jedi Adventures, August 2nd. Then the next headline we've got is they announced the schedule for what you just mentioned, San Diego Comic-Con. Schedule came out at the end of last week. And Friday during Comic-Con is always known as Star Wars Day. And they have one room set aside where it's just Star Wars panels from beginning to end. And I decided with my boss, talking to him, that I'm just going to sit in there the whole day and cover every panel. Do you have plans to attend any of those panels?
I would love to. Unfortunately, John and I only got Thursday and Sunday passes. And our request for a press pass was we got it for WonderCon, but we didn't get it for Comic-Con. So so there, I noticed that Star Wars Day was on Friday. I was like, oh, bummer. And some of the authors that I was hoping to meet are only there Friday, Saturday. So I was like, so unfortunately, I will not be able to see that. So I will have to touch base with you and get the scoop.
Yeah, I'll be live tweeting it, live threading it, whatever we're doing from Laughing Place, Twitter and Thread accounts, and probably some Instagram stuff. But we'll have all sorts of coverage from that whole day. And then also, in addition to that full day of Star Wars content at Comic-Con, which includes, there's a Hasbro panel. There's my friends at the Heroes from the Halcyon panel are hosting their panel about immersive Star Wars entertainment, which is awesome. Can't wait for that. Very cool. There's my friends at Skywalking Through Neverland, another podcast, have a trivia panel that wraps up the whole day. But then on Saturday, there is a panel about the Star Wars Outlaws video game that's coming up, which, we're talking about a video game today. Have you watched that footage that got released for this Outlaws game? You excited for that?
I did see it, and I saw the whatever. I'm really excited to have kind of that Assassin's Creed / like, I'm not gonna say GTA but like with the random encounter thing, like set in the Star Wars universe. So I'm excited for that kind of brand of game.
Yeah, me too. I'm super psyched about this. And, I've said many times on this show before, I'm always excited when somebody is exploring the side of Star Wars that's not just the Jedi and the Force. That's definitely part of it, and it should be a part of it. But I always wish we would get more stuff from like the underworld and the Outlaws. So that's really up my alley. Very excited for that open world game, and we'll learn more about that at Comic-Con this next weekend. So also from Comic-Con news, Hasbro has released their list of exclusives, which includes a 3 3/4 inch vintage collection Chrysanthemum, Black Chrysanthemum, the Wookiee bounty hunter. So that'll be the Hasbro Star Wars exclusive. And then they're also probably going to be announcing this new HasLab project, and people have kind of figured out what this is already. Have you been spoiled about this?
It's got to be the Ghost, right?
Yeah, everyone is pretty sure it's the Ghost. I think it makes sense. Lego is doing the Ghost again. Hasbro has to be doing the HasLab 3 3/4 inch scale vintage collection, the Ghost. It ties in with Ahsoka. We know that ship is coming back in that show, so that would not be surprising if that ended up being the case. But I'm very excited to find out more about that at Hasbro's panel. That will be on Friday at San Diego Comic-Con 2023, coming up next week. Comic books. Are you a Star Wars comic guy?
I am. Yeah. I'm a recent subscriber to the comic scene. So yeah,
great. So as you probably know, they were releasing a ton of comics recently. There were weeks where there were 5, 7 issues coming out all at the same time. This week it's down to 2, which is much more manageable. I would like this to be the standard. 2 issues a week is fine with me. We don't need 7. That's just too many. But we got Darth Vader number 36 and Bounty Hunters number 36. I enjoyed both of these. Have you had a chance to read these, Sean?
No, I'm a few issues behind. I'm not reading the Bounty Hunter series, and I'm a few issues behind on Vader.
Cool.
But I've got number 36 actually waiting at the shop for me to pick up. So
sweet. So all these ongoing Marvel titles, at least the 4 that are set between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, they're all building toward another one of these big crossover events called Star Wars Dark Droids. And actually, this week's Darth Vader issue is very heavily like building toward that, and you'll get a sense of what that's about when you pick that up. But yeah, Dark Droids starts August 2nd. It's written by Charles Soule, who wrote War of the Bounty Hunters, Hidden Empire, Crimson Reign. He does all those crossover events for the Marvel Star Wars titles. And that's the big new one for this summer, starting August 2nd. And Marvel just released the plot synopsis for that, and you can read that over at laughingplace.com. I'm super psyched. I always like this stuff. Charles Soule is such a great writer, one of my current favorite Star Wars writers. So that should be, yeah, absolutely agree. That should be entertaining at the very least. And then lastly, in Star Wars headlines for this week, going back to Young Jedi Adventures, I received a box of merchandise. It's like toys and a couple, there's a Lego set, there's a couple Hasbro toys, there's a Mattel plush of Nubs, and I did an unboxing of this on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. It's just like 10 minutes long, and you can go and check that out right now. But lots of cool stuff coming out from all these different licensees for the animated series Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures. So that is the end of Star Wars headlines for this week. And that's going to bring us to our main topic, which is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, the video game from, well, we're going to get into who it was developed by Respawn Entertainment and published by Electronic Arts. But before we talk about this game, I want to ask you, Sean, what was your experience with the previous game in this series, which is called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order? That came out a few years ago. What were your thoughts when that game came out?
So yeah, I mean, I had played the Battlefront series and stuff like that before, right? But that's, being a shooter, we hadn't had a sort of action adventure type game. So when they announced that, I was super excited for it. I got it. I don't think I got it day one, but I think I got it the release week that it came out. And much like Survivor, I spent, I don't know, 2 weeks straight, just grinding through it. So I loved the exploration. The worlds, then were super fun to explore. Going to Dathomir that first time and just getting annihilated by the Zabrak brothers and and the Night Sister, the various Night Sisters getting the double bladed saber. Going to Ilum was amazing, and then seeing it slowly turn in, in the process of being converted, later into Starkiller Base. Just in general, it was a really fun story. A great game to explore in, and the lightsaber combat was great. And yeah, overall, just an excellent game. So what about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. I tend to take my time with games like this. I am very much a fan of games where exploration is encouraged. I grew up on Legend of Zelda, so anything that's like that is right up my alley. I'm not as big of a fan of battles, like fighting, which is also a big part of this game, but I do try to muscle through it. And we're going to talk about like difficulty levels later. But it is satisfying when something is challenging and then you finally beat it. So that's a big part of what Jedi Fallen Order was about. And then also Jedi Survivor. So I would say it was satisfying on those two levels, the exploration and the winning the fights. And the characters are great. The acting is great. Really, really enjoyed that game. And then we're going to talk about the new game. But first, I want to address a comment. Keith asked if we were worried about the writer's strike. So not only the writer's strike is going on right now, but also the actors have now gone on strike. Both of these things are going to affect San Diego Comic-Con. It's going to be a very strange year at Comic-Con this year, because you already didn't have a lot of the big studios represented there. Marvel Studios opted out of planning a big announcement panel there. No really huge studio panels. I know there's a Star Trek panel in Hall H, but not a lot of other stuff going on. And then these two strikes are really affecting like who's going to be on the panels that are going to happen. Like, I don't even know what they're going to do. If you can't have writers or actors, who else is going to be there.
Well,
I
and
don't know.
going back to Ahsoka, right, with all the
Yeah,
premiere stuff and everything like that, you're
yeah,
not going to see Rosario. Well, it's very unlikely you'd see her, and so
yeah.
you're going to rely a lot on your directors and producers to be pushing stuff. I imagine it'll be the same at the convention.
Right. Yeah. It may just be directors. Or I kind of was talking about because I picked up my comic books at my local comic shop on Wednesday, and I was talking to my comic guy about this, and we were saying like, oh, Comic Con might be a little bit more about the comics this
Mhm.
year than it is about movies and TV, which would be, a flashback to like pre 2000 era when before I was going to Comic Con when it was really about the comics. So,
Mhm.
but we'll see. I think it'll be interesting, a very, very interesting year and a very strange year at Comic Con. But getting back into the Star Wars video game. So when I think we all kind of figured after the success of Fallen Order that we would be getting more of these games, and the implication has been that it'll be a trilogy, I believe. But when you found out that this second game was coming out, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, what were your expectations from Respawn and EA about the second game in the series?
Um, so I guess, I wasn't quite sure how they were going to continue the Cal Seer, you know, relationship. Because at the end of Jedi Fallen Order, you get her knighting him on the ship, and then, hey, we got to go on this, let's keep going on this adventure, right? And so,
Yeah,
you're not sure how everything's gonna kind of fall out there. The fact that they went from the old gen to the next gen, I was hoping that we would get more expansive worlds, and we definitely did. Um,
right.
which was nice to see. So I was hoping for an improvement on the combat side, because while the original combat was good, it was it was a little button mashy. It didn't feel like there wasn't as much fluidity.
Yeah.
Um, and then again, kind of the continuation of how are they going to grow the Jedi Order, or reform the Jedi Order in the second game. So that's kind of what I was looking forward to, and kind of sort of the expectations going into Survivor.
So I have a question for you about the combat since you mentioned that. I I feel like I have trouble remembering all the things that I can do in these games
A
because
100%.
not only so they retained everything you could do in the first game, they carried that over, and then you add every time you get skill points, you can spend them on buying new moves, and you got to remember which combination of buttons to press for each
Yep.
move. And I can't keep them all in my head, so I end up relying on the same ones over and over again. Like my favorite move is force pulling a droid or a stormtrooper toward me and just stabbing
Oh yeah.
stabbing him with my lightsaber.
Hmm.
But do you feel you're over relying on the same moves over and over?
Definitely, 100%, and it always resorts back to the X button, just the traditional slash with
Yeah.
Jin then parry. Um, I did find myself having to use the saber throw a lot, especially with those stupid scav droids, which we'll get to later, I suppose,
Yeah.
and the things I wasn't a fan of. And then the power headed strike. So once I got the crossguard saber, I was
Yeah.
just wailing on people after that because that thing hit like a truck. So, but yes, I revert back to single button presses all the time.
So did you end up settling on crossguard as being your like go-to lightsaber stance? Because I found crossguard to be too slow for me. It takes a long time to swing that thing.
Yes.
And I ended up liking Blaster the most actually because I think it actually ties into what I was saying before. Like I like the elements of Star Wars that kind of lean away from the Jedi a little bit. And when I can shoot that blaster from a distance at those enemies, I know it runs out of energy every once in a while. You have to have the melee combat to kind of refuel that. But I don't know, which would you say is your favorite of the stances in this game?
So I found myself using the double blade, like the dual wield,
Okay. Yeah.
like the Ahsoka style setup, um, mainly for the speed, the quickness, in and out, and the crossguard I used in a couple of the boss fights, just because again the parry timing was much more open, and so then you could just do your power move and chunk them down real quick, as opposed to kind
Okay.
of death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Geo in the chat said that he was happy to keep most of the old skills and improve upon them rather than the usual lose, like Metroid. I don't know if you've played the Metroid games. I love those growing up, but you always lose all your abilities at the beginning and you have to slowly, gradually acquire them through the whole game. But if they did a third game, I don't know how they would possibly add more stuff that you can do. Like another great one was this in Fallen Order, or was this added for Survivor? The mind control, where you can have the enemies fight on your side. Was that a new ability?
That was new. That was new in this game. You didn't have
Yeah.
the mind control before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I used that
fun.
an awful lot too. And you can upgrade that. Like,
yes,
the first time you get it, you can really only control like the basic level stormtroopers. And then you keep getting skill points and you can pay to upgrade it. And by the end, you can control pretty much everyone except the droids. But the droids you can hack into, which was a lot of fun to do.
You can use, well. Yeah, you can use BD1 to like spike them from a distance and then watch them fight each other. I used my mind control on the giant monsters that I didn't want to fight, and then they would fight each other.
Yeah.
And so I'd have the giant like stink triceratops thing, fight the other one, and that was that. I had a lot of fun with that. I'll tell you about a way I cheesed the game a little bit later on too.
Okay. Well, let's get into our overall thoughts on Jedi Survivor then. Did you have anything? I think we can both say that we enjoyed the game. It's a very positive experience overall, but did you have anything specific that stuck out to you that you liked more than Fallen Order, or just made an impression on you more than anything else in this game?
So I thought the story, and I realize that for those who may not be as up on the High Republic, there's going to be some confusion there, or maybe just not as in-depth understanding of what's going on. It doesn't really detract from the game, I don't think. But and before we go, what's the spoiler level on this? Is this like a spoiler heavy thing, or?
Yeah, well, we should say, the game's been out 2.5 months. We both took our time kind of completing it. So I think I will say, like, we're gonna get into spoilers just for the sake of this discussion. If you are waiting, or if you are still playing through the game and you haven't spoiled yourself on the ending, just be prepared, or maybe tune out now and wait until you finish the game to come back and listen to this episode. But yeah, we'll be getting into full spoilers here.
So I'll try to dance around some of the major plot points, but the big one for me that I enjoyed the most, I think, was the level of emotion in this game was ratcheted up by like a factor of 10 compared to Fallen Order, mainly because we know the characters now and we can relate to them. And so the way that they intertwined the OG cast and eventually did bring them back together, coupled with the couple new characters that you do meet, just that interaction was something that I found myself enjoying a lot more. I told John on our last episode, I actually cried at the end of it.
That's awesome.
The last 10 minutes of gameplay, because like you're so into it and the emotion and everything, and then you're done and you're like, like the catharsis of like the intensity, and then everything that happens in kind of not the prologue, but that end scene is just so heavy. And so so the story, and then again the worlds, the exploration. I'm very much like you. I run wild and try and find all the crazy things sometimes before I'm leveled high enough to beat them, and which is the fun part. And between Kobo and Jeddah, Kobo had so much variety. I love that. So yeah, the story and just the worlds were a joy. Credit to the developers. They did a phenomenal job. What about you?
Yeah, agreed. Definitely agreed. Honestly, you're very right about the characters, the way they interact. But I think my absolute number one favorite thing about this game is that you have like a base of operations. You have the Pyloon Saloon on the planet Kobo that it just, you keep returning there throughout the whole game. And every time you come back, there's more people hanging out that you can talk to and get missions from and hear rumors from. And rumors are basically side quests of this game. So they point you in all sorts of different directions. But I loved the way that saloon was designed. I just wanted to. I want it to exist in real life. I want them to make a Lego set out of it or something. I just want more. Yeah, I want more Pyloon Saloon, like Tales from Pyloon Saloon novel or anthology short stories or something like that. I fell in love with that location because Grease is probably my favorite character of these games. So him having his own, starting his own business, starting his own bar, that I really got a kick out of, and I just wanted to live there. You kind of do.
Exactly. And that was something too. The game at times didn't take itself too seriously, right? Like, so with the writing Rick the Door Technician, which was, did you like the Rick the Door Technician? Did you like that?
Right. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
You're like, I'm gonna die because I've just finished busting up this room, and then you have this single lone trooper running at you. You're like, oh, okay, that's not so bad.
Yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit. Did anything? Obviously, we have mostly positive thoughts about this game, but did anything stick out to you that you did not like?
There were some of the force tears that were absurdly challenging.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was because of the hitboxes on like the Rancor or Ogdo Bogdo, where you think you've dodged it and then it's like yoing, and you get snapped back in and then eaten and you're toast. So there were some things with like I think some of the, not graphics, but the way that the things were interacting that were kind of frustrating in those scav droids. One of the things for the 100% is getting all the priorite shards and stuff like that. And these things, you have one shot to get them before they disappear, right? And then you have to reload to respawn them. And so as you get towards the end, it's like, I guess I have to restart, 5 times in a row if you don't get a chance to get them. So, but other than that, no, I don't have many complaints about the game.
Yeah, I was trying to get to 100% before we did this discussion, but I kind of gave up on that the other night. I was like, I should just try to finish this because I need to know what happens in the end. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I did beat the Ogdo Bogdo Force Tear, where there's 2 of them. That to me, I don't know if you'll agree, but that was the most difficult fight in the game that I encountered. I mean, there were there ended up being like 3 big boss battles in the end, and like the final act of the game. And I don't think any of them took anywhere near as many tries as Ogdo Bogdo times 2 for me. I think it was close to like 50 attempts that I made. And yeah, the tongue coming out at you and grabbing you, it's a one-hit kill. You ask my wife how many times I screamed out, "He's cheating. Ogdo Bogdo is cheating." Because like you said, you could dodge that thing and it'll still get you.
Exactly.
It was so frustrating, but I felt, and I didn't decrease my difficulty level. I committed myself to it.
Oh, you're a better man than me.
Okay.
Better man than me.
We're going to talk about that some more in a little bit.
Did you get to the double Rancor fight?
No, but that terrifies me.
There's a double Rancor force tear as well. So
gosh,
when you get to that, enjoy that.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Let me get through some of the creative credits for this game. Like I said, this was released April 28th, this past spring. The producer was named Paul Hatfield. It was designed by Jason DeHarris and Jeff Majors. The programmer was named John Carr. The artists were Chris Sutton and Nate Stevens. The writer was Aaron Contreras, four writers: Aaron Contreras, Danny Holman, Pete Stewart, Cheyenne Morin, and the composers, who I think I'm going to be interviewing actually at Comic-Con. Just found out about this. The composers were Stephen Barton and Gordy Hobb. The developer was Respawn, like we mentioned, and it was published by Electronic Arts, who has, I think, a spotty record when it comes to Star Wars video games. But these 2 have definitely been well received overall, I would say. Let's get into the cast here. Real quick, I'll just list off the names, and you can tell me if you have any particular thoughts about this character's arc or the actor that played them, their performance. Because I think this is a really, really strong cast of voice actors. And they do this interesting thing with these games in that basically the character that you're seeing, the face that you're seeing is the voice actor's face.
Yep.
So they kind of scan them into the game. So you really get an impression of what they look like, how their physicality through the character. So Cal Kestis is obviously voiced again by Cameron Moynihan. You probably know him from the Gotham show where he played the Joker. I think that was the most famous role. But he had that. Did you see that ad that he did with Mark Hamill?
Yes.
Building up to the release of this game. Where Hamill is kind of training him to be a Jedi Knight. That was a lot of fun. Just a great performance, great lead character here to guide us through this game. And then probably a spoiler, definitely a spoiler, but you do get to play as one other character in the game much later on in the game, near the end. Seer Junda, the Jedi, I guess you call her Jedi Master, played by Deborah Wilson, who I knew from Mad TV growing up. And she does a great job as well. And then Bode is the new character that's introduced. Bode Akuna, played by Noshir Dalal, who is also the voice of Rampart on The Bad Batch. Have you watched The Bad Batch?
No way.
Is he really? He's Admiral Rampart on The Bad Batch. So I was like, I know that name from somewhere. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I thought that was a weird coincidence or intentional. They must trust him because he does a great job.
That is interesting given his character arc.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yes, very much so. And then everybody's favorite from the first game is back. Marin, the Night Sister, voiced by Tina Ivlev. She's in the game quite a bit, actually. I know people were worried from the trailers that we weren't going to get enough Marin, but she's a pretty big presence in there. The main villain is Dagan Gera, who is a Jedi, kind of frozen in time or left suspended in a back to tank after. Now, you mentioned the High Republic. I wanted to get into this a little bit. Are you reading the High Republic?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so High Republic is like hundreds of years before the Skywalker saga. There's a whole bunch of books and comics that tie in with that storytelling initiative. This character, Dagan Gera, he hasn't popped up yet in the High Republic stuff that we've gotten in the books and comics, but I have to wonder, I mean, do you think because there's still like one phase of the High Republic left, do you think they're going to actually bring in Dagan Gera? Do you think we'll get that satisfying tie-in to Jedi Survivor, or is this going to be a whole separate thing where he just happens to be from that period, but we'll never see him or interact with him in the High Republic era?
Yeah, so it'll be interesting how far ahead of phase 1 they jump in phase 3.
Yeah.
Because you get some of those flashbacks to the Nihil attack. I think it happens on Tanalorr in the game, and so I hope we get more explanation as to like what leads up to that. Because the fact that the symbol of the arrays aligning is the symbol for the Nihil is pretty. I mean, it's not a coincidence, right? It can't be a coincidence. So nothing in Star Wars is ever coincidental. So I hope that they tie it together in the third phase for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and they did name drop the Nile a couple times too. I remember when you're on the final planet at the end, they talk about the Nile having attacked that planet in the High Republic era. So yeah, I feel like there has to be some kind of story connection that they're building toward in the literature, the publishing side. Crossing my fingers that we get some of that in phase 3 of the High Republic. Grease, like I mentioned, is my favorite. Daniel Roebuck, he played Jay Leno. I remember in the Late Shift, the TV movie about the late night wars in the 90s. He was on Lost. He is Dr. Arst on Lost. Great character actor. Uncle Daniel, we call him. Yeah, Grease is just wonderful. I love that character. Now, did you read the novel that was set between the two games?
What is that? Battle Scars, Jedi Scars.
Battle Scars. Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to read it. No. I heard it was really good though. I heard
It's
it was
good
really
stuff.
good
And that's where we learn how Grease lost his arm. So
Okay.
if you want that little piece of the storytelling puzzle here, I won't spoil how he loses his arm, but that story is told in the novel by Sam Maggs, Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars. So check that out. I did an interview with her actually on this podcast. You can go and listen to that as well. Centauri Cree. I don't remember this character. Who's Centauri Cree? Does that ring a bell for you?
Yeah, so she is Dagon's like cohort. She's the one who he's working with to try to get to Tanalorr, and she's the one who takes his. Well, it's not a spoiler. She's the one who takes his arm in the Force like vision that Cal sees.
Right. Okay. So Centauri is voiced by Tracy Ifachor. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. Ravis is the big like hulking dude who's working with
awesome character.
Dagon. You have to fight him a couple times. Voiced by DC Douglas. The Ninth Sister Inquisitor is back played by Misty Lee. There's a great droid character left over from the High Republic called Z, who you meet and befriend, and she becomes a big part of the game, voiced by Kendall Ray. Eno Cordova, this is a big surprise to me because I thought I remembered that this character was dead. So were you surprised when he popped up?
100%, because I played all of Jedi Fallen Order assuming that the holograms of him were from so long ago. And then when it opens on Jedi and Beatty gets excited, they're like, oh, it's got to be Seer. And then it's Eno.
So it's great to see him and hang out with him a bit. Gio said Scuva was fun to listen through.
Scuva.
That's probably my other favorite character in the game. So he's like, I don't remember that species name, but I think it's the species that appeared in The Last Jedi in the Canto Bight Casino. And he's like a fisherman in this game. He's a tiny little guy. He has his own little skiff that he rides around on, and he goes to all the different planets hunting for fish to put in the aquarium at the cantina. I just love that whole that reminded me of Zelda, kind of like this idea of going out and collecting all these things, a very kind of Zelda idea. But that was a really fun side quest part of this game to me. And then like every time he catches a fish, you get a new part of his like life story. You just kind of stand there and listen to him, but it's so entertaining that I did not mind. Did you like Scuva?
I love Scuva, and whoever voice acted him was with the heavy Scottish brogue was so, it made it that much better listening to the fish stories. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's a blast. I don't have the name of the voice actor for that one, unfortunately, but Doma is another shopkeeper in the village where the cantina is. She was voiced by Rebecca Winsaki. I thought she was Margot Martindale because I think she's doing like a Margot Martindale impression. She's like another character actress. But it sounded just like her, but it's Rebecca Winsaki. Monk is the name of the bartender droid at the cantina, at Grease's cantina, voiced by Chris Diamantopoulos, who you may know from the recent Mickey Mouse cartoons. He's actually the voice of Mickey in those cartoons. So voice actor.
Really?
And Turgle, everybody's favorite Turgle. This is the breakout supporting character. They got to make a Turgle action figure. He's kind of accident prone, I think, like trouble prone, turtle looking guy, or a frog looking guy, actually, or turtle meets a frog, voiced by Richard Stephen Horvitz. So that's the cast of characters. Were there any others that stood out to you, or any of these that you wanted to comment on, or the performances or anything like that?
The only other one that I found, like, I mean, all the characters in the cantina, like you said earlier, are fantastic. The interaction with Cage, I thought Cage was a great character. She's kind of like the bounty hunter that you meet. And for as standoffish as Moran was, for some reason, I found myself enjoying talking to him as well and learning like his backstory. But yeah, the cast was fantastic. So, and I'm glad Gio said scuba, because I loved scuba. Scuba was fantastic.
Yeah, somehow he got left off my list, but thank you for mentioning that, Gio, because I definitely wanted to talk about scuba. And then a couple big surprise guest stars that, again, spoiler alert, we're going to mention who they are. Recurring familiar Star Wars characters that pop up. One of them is so there's also a string of side quests that you do that are bounty hunter missions that you're assigned by one of the denizens of the cantina, and you build your way up. Each bounty gets more and more difficult, and guess who shows up during the last one of those? It's Boba Fett, of course, and he is voiced by Temuera Morrison, who you know him from the prequel trilogy, and he was in Book of Boba Fett as Boba Fett as well. So great to hear his voice. And then Darth Vader, you fight him again in this game, but not James Earl Jones. He's voiced by Scott Lawrence, who has voiced him in the past, including, I believe, in Fallen Order. So it's great to see both of those. Did you struggle with the Darth Vader battle?
I did.
Yeah, me too.
I did, mainly because, I had worked to get all these stim packs, and then I now have 4 stim packs, and I'm not super well versed in the combat, as we talked about earlier. So it was I would get like to the final like quarter, and then he'd throw like half a bookshelf at me or something, and I'd explode, and I'd be like, oh well, I guess I'll do that again. So
yeah, that was a tough fight for sure.
And you get the things like, if it's too hard, lower the difficulty, and you're like, I'm not going to do that. Nope. And then you double down, you redouble your efforts.
I want to go through the planets that we get to visit, the locations from this game. You start off actually on Coruscant, the city planet that is the center of the galaxy, basically the home of the Republic before the rise of the Empire, and then the home of the Empire in the films and in the ancillary materials. It's been in a bunch of different stories. I think I was expecting to spend more time on Coruscant, but you don't get a tremendous amount of area to explore on that planet. I think that's pretty much just like your prologue, and then you move off to other worlds. I don't know. How did you feel about the Coruscant portion of this game?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you're not meant to spend a whole lot of time there. The only reason to go back is to find, just FYI, that's where the double Rancor Force Terror is. It's on Coruscant. But yeah, the only reason to go back is to get all your stuff. So there isn't anything else to explore. So purely for the tutorial.
Right. And then your main planet that you're going to spend the most time on is Kobo. And I got to say, I was so impressed by the design of this planet. Everything there is just so gorgeous. It's like lush and green. And they really, poured all of not all, because everything else looks great too, but a lot of the effort went into designing Kobo and just wandering around, taking in the sights, exploring every nook and cranny. What stuck out to you about that planet?
Yeah, I actually like sort of the sky. So once you start getting into the High Republic stuff, the juxtaposition of kind of the gritty side of things, where like Pyloons and everything is, versus the bright and shiny High Republic stuff. Getting that part of the mission where you like climb up, up to that trek is amazing, especially with some of the views you get. And then the Lucre Hulk. I loved being able to go into Lucre Hulk on Kobo and go explore the old Clone Wars, Separatist battleship.
Yeah, that climb, like you mentioned, there's one shot where you're coming around the side of a mountain and the camera like intentionally zooms way back out, and you get this nice view of the whole planet that you've been exploring throughout the game off in the distance, and then also this mountainside that you're climbing up, and it just looks so amazing. Like breathtaking design went into the environments in this game. You also go to Jeddah, which is the Pilgrim Moon from Rogue One, a Star Wars story. It's also popped up in the comics recently, in the High Republic as well. And It's more of a side quest type planet. I mean, there are like story missions there, but again, a lot of stuff to collect. But you do get you're not in the city. You're not in Jeddah City. You're off in the desert where there's all these temples. Kind of like it sort of looks like where Saw Gerrera is hanging out
Yes.
in
Yep.
Rogue One, like that area of the planet. Any memories that you have from exploring Jeddah?
That stupid scorpion that
Yeah.
just annihilates you under the sand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Like you said, going to the different temples, like there's an unlock that you get if you get all three temples in the corner and
Yeah.
then they converge, sort of thing. So just getting that kind of uh, uh, not kind of a backstory about
Yeah.
uh, anchorites, that
Yes.
group of people.
Mhm.
I thought that was nice to kind of give that backstory. Um, it was a fun planet to explore.
Yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit as well. What about the creatures? My wife hated those creatures that you ride around on Jeddah. She said they look like
Yeah,
tapeworm with legs.
the giant. I don't even know. They're like giant giraffe thingies, man. But
Yeah,
uh, they they were they were definitely a unique creature, especially compared to the I forget their names, but the little bird or the little creatures you could ride on Kobo, right? That
yeah.
are much more size appropriate. So, uh,
I don't remember the Kobo creatures' names, but the tapeworm looking things on Jeddah were called Spamels, which I really like
that's right.
that name for a creature in Star Wars. I don't know if I'd like to have one in real life,
No,
but that's a good one. Geo said they reminded him of the Land Striders from Dark Crystal. That's a nice observation there. Geo very much so reminded me of that as well. Okay, let's talk about the Shattered Moon, which is the moon of Kobo that has been partially destroyed, hence the name. And there's an old base there that you explore, and you activate this beam that gets shot. Does it get shot down to the surface? Yeah, it gets shot down to the surface of Kobo, and then you have to redirect that to find the path
hmm
to Tanalor, which is the final planet. But again, the Shattered Moon, it's like another one of those like side quest planets. It is part of the story. There's a lot to collect there. Did you have anything that stuck out to you about that location?
the only thing that I really enjoyed doing was that one room where you end up
Yeah,
facing a bunch of the characters or the the bandits, the Bedlam Raiders, and you can
right.
force pull them into the ginormous like Death Star cannon thing that just obliterates them. There's an
Yeah,
achievement for that too if you do that. But that was probably the best part of that whole planet.
yeah, agreed. That was super cool. So these last two planets I'm going to leave for a minute because this kind of is going to lead me into the next topic I want to talk about, the length of this game. And I have like a funny quote unquote story to tell you because you had messaged me early yesterday evening. I think it was around like 6:30 or something. And you asked if we were still on for today, which is a perfectly reasonable question. And I said, yes, I just beat the game. I actually had an event to go to last night that I was about to leave for. And then I was going to come home and write the outline for today's episode.
Mhm.
But what I had actually just done was beat the Darth Vader battle, which, as you know,
Oh
is
yeah.
not the end of the game. It goes on for quite a bit after that.
Oh wow. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I had just assumed because Darth Vader was the final battle in the first game, I assumed he would be the final battle in this game. But there's like a whole act to this game after that
Yeah.
that I didn't expect, that I didn't realize. And I gotta say, it made me feel like I definitely got my money's worth. Like you definitely get your bang for your buck. But for
Mhm.
somebody who was like kind of on a deadline, I was like, oh no. So I had to go to my event and come home, and I think I finished the game around 12:30 a.m. And then I wrote the outline for our discussion right now and went to
Yep.
bed very late. And then I had to get up early and drive to San Diego. So it was a chaotic day for me. But um, I don't know. How did you feel about this final act and the overall length of the game itself?
Yeah, so I'm impressed that you were able to beat the last two bits in, I don't know, probably what, less than 3 hours. That's
Yes.
quite impressive. But yeah, as far as the length is concerned, like the main story isn't really, I don't think, super long. Like you could probably get done with it in
Yeah.
20 hours, maybe 25 hours, something like that. And that's if you go kind of slow. So, but as far as like all the side quests, you know, with
Yeah.
the bounty hunter missions, stuff like that, I thought the amount of content was excellent. It was actually probably more than I expected. I didn't feel like it drug it terribly at
Yeah.
any point, so I thought the flow was okay. Um, so yeah, no, I was very happy with the amount of content and the overall length of the game.
Yeah, me too. I think, there's a bit more to do than in the first game, so they've definitely built upon the expectations. And I think that my problem was that I was trying to 100% it. Like I didn't
Mhm.
want to beat the game until I had everything that you could get before you beat the game. And
Sure.
I realized that was kind of a fool's errand and just decided to kind of power through. So now I do have the task of going back and filling in whatever is left. It's just a handful of stuff, really. Some of those tears and
Mhm.
seeds and different things you got to collect.
The
I think I
sea,
I think I got all the scrolls on Jeddah, but I haven't gotten all the what is it called,
the priorite shards.
priorite shards on Kobo. So I got to head back and do that and wrap up. And I never fought that Rancor that's hiding out in that cave on
Oh yeah.
Kobo either. So I feel like after the um Ogdo Bogdo fight, though, I shouldn't have too much trouble with the Rancor, or at least the single Rancor by itself.
Right, exactly.
We'll
Well,
see.
and I remember I stumbled into that like within 30 minutes of being on Kobo. I was like, "Oh, this is a cool cave." And then I jumped down and I'm
Yeah.
like, "I'm screwed."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we've talked a little bit about the difficulty of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. In my current age, I have settled on playing through on the standard difficulty level. Like I just leave it where it is when I get a new
Mhm.
video game. I try to beat it like that. What is your approach when it comes to difficulty?
Yeah, I'm 100%. I played through on Jedi Knight, which is the middle
Yeah.
difficulty that it starts at. I tried playing Fallen Order the second time through on Jedi Master, Grandmaster, and it's just not fun. And on Jedi Knight in this game, I feel like the difficulty level was higher than Jedi Knight was in
Yeah.
Fallen Order. Like I felt very challenged on Jedi Knight. Um, and yeah, like I said, you were a better man than I in that I did have to drop to story mode after I beat the game to beat Ogdo, like double
Yeah.
Ogdo and double Rancor. Those got beat on story mode, and I'm gonna I'm man enough to admit that I did after the story. Like I beat the full story on Jedi Knight, but I for those side missions I did drop it to story mode. So
Yeah, I beat the full story on Jedi Knight, and I also am proud to say that I beat the Ogdo Bogdo times two fight on Jedi Knight. Although
proud of you.
I was very tempted to lower the difficulty, but I kept hitting
Well done.
you like you get birthed out of that dream sequence. You're back in that shop. I could see it in my head because I did it like
Mhm.
50 times, and then you just turn around, you go right back in, and yeah, it was frustrating, but I got through it. Who knows, I may encounter something more difficult and have to reduce the difficulty level as I try to do the 100% completion. So we pretty much talked about the most difficult parts. I think some of those force tears and battles and collecting all the uh yeah, just a whole assortment of little side missions, the bounty hunter stuff,
Mhm.
lots of stuff to do in this game. You just hours and hours and hours of side quests and the so the benefit of completing this stuff is you do get power ups, you do get the skill points that you can spend on acquiring more skills,
Mhm.
and then you also get a lot of um, cosmetic stuff that's just like you can change your haircut, you can change your facial hair, you can change the
Mhm.
make and model of your lightsaber, the colors of your lightsaber. BD1's parts can be swapped out. How do you feel about that, like kind of collecting the cosmetics? Do you feel like that makes your time feel worth the investment, or do you prefer the stuff that actually helps you advance through the game?
Um, I will say certain cosmetics I did enjoy having,
Yeah.
specifically like the appearances.
Right.
Because I ended up making kind of my own Obi-Wan look with the
Oh,
windswept
nice.
hair and the hermit outfit and everything like that.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of the metal colors, once I unlocked, there was one, it was like unique metals, and like they had Beskar and they had like a High Republic ore type thing on it. And so then I would make my High Republic style lightsaber, and I was pretty happy with that. And then I like Beskar out BD1, so he was invulnerable. But
Nice.
I tend to agree, like just the collectibles, just the cosmetic ones, they're kind of meh.
Yeah.
I was really hoping that some of the like legendary weapons that you find, that they would have some sort of added bonus perk to them, and they're just normal, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
So I do wish that there was a bit more payoff for the
Right.
effort.
The most disappointing ones were when you just get like a new like color scheme.
Mhm.
But I agree with you on like the haircuts and the facial hair. Those are always fun. And my approach to that was always I would keep whatever the newest one that I got was. And some of the facial hair options in this game are just terrible. Like they're just, and my
Yes.
wife hated whenever Cal looked just awful. He's like, Cal, uh, she just kept saying how Cal needed to get his look in
Mhm.
order and get back to the Cameron Moynihan that we know and love. But it's fun to have that customizability in this game, even though it is just cosmetic and
Mhm.
doesn't really affect the gameplay. It does add a level of fun, I think. Anything else that sticks out to you, or anything else that you want to talk about regarding Star Wars Jedi Survivor that we haven't covered yet?
Um, I don't. I mean, I don't really think so. The one tip I would give people, if they're if they're just starting out, right,
Yeah.
is definitely explore to get some of those stims.
Yeah.
By the time I got to the Vader fight, I think I had, well, you don't get to use them, but I think I had probably 10 or 11 stims at that
Mm.
point, just from bumming around. And so uh, I would recommend, taking a couple hours and exploring things to like 60, 70%, just to get some of the added stims, because those are
Yeah.
obviously beneficial collectibles. Otherwise, yeah, um, the completion, 100% completion, you don't actually get anything special for that.
Okay.
The way you did in Fallen Order, you do obviously get the achievements leading up to that, but um, as far as buying everything in Doma shop and whatnot, but you don't get any sort of benefit outside of learning everybody's stories, you know talking with Scuba about everything. So you get the full breadth of everything, every dialogue, soundbite, everything. Um, you get to hear, and so in that respect, you get the full story. But after spending a little over 70 hours
Yeah.
playing in the game, um, I'm glad I did it. I had fun doing it, and that's
Yeah.
that's the most important thing, right? Just running around exploring. My
Yeah.
son likes to watch me play, so I can't complain about that. Dad gets to play his game while his son watches, so that's better than Mickey Mouse Clubhouse for the 50th time. So, um, but overall, I really, and I know it's probably our last topic here, but I'm really excited to see where they go in the third game.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, considering everything that happened in this story, I think they're setting up a very interesting third game. Yeah, I think it's not necessary that we spoil the big stuff that happens near the end, but I will say that I'm very intrigued to see where Cal's path takes him
mhm.
from there. Is there anything else that you're hoping or expecting from the third entry in this series?
I'll be curious to see how far ahead they jump. you know, with what
right.
Seer kind of alludes to, and guiding her, guiding her forward. You know, the her will have to be older to have it kind of make
Yes.
sense, I would think. And it'll be interesting to see how Cal's character struggles with what what happens, what he touches, as far as the dark side is concerned, and
Yeah.
how that affects him. For those of us who've read the High Republic, with Elzar, if you've read the books, and his kind of reaching out to the dark side and how it affected him and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with that with Cal.
Right.
So yeah, I'm excited for, whatever they come out with. They've gone 2 for 2, so I don't expect anything different with the third.
No, me neither. I'm super psyched whenever, I'm sure it'll be a few years before we get to wrap this story up, and I'm super curious. The other thing that I was wondering about is like how they are going to deal with Cal's future when it comes to being around. This has been my issue with a lot of the fact that we have had so many survivors of Order 66. Like, why aren't these Jedi popping up to help Luke Skywalker fight Darth Vader and the Emperor during the Galactic Civil War? So I'm curious if they will try to get Cal out of the way. He kind of ends up on this planet Tanalorr at the end of this game, which is a refuge from the Empire. And I wonder, are they going to put in that effort the way they did in like Star Wars? Well, I don't want to spoil Rebels for you, so I won't talk about that. But I'm very curious about how they will deal with Cal's future in regards to how many Jedi there are out there in the galaxy. You were talking about a tip that you had for gameplay, and I wanted to give a little tip as well, because like I said, I'm more into the exploration side of things. I'm not so much into the fighting, but I did find if you're like me and you're not into the fighting, I do have a tip for you. Be aggressive. I was playing defensively at first, and I found that on some of the big boss battles, the more aggressive that I was, the more luck that I was having in beating these guys, especially actually on that Darth Vader fight. Like, just keep hacking away. I mean, you do have to hit him a couple times, dodge, come back to it, but don't play defensively. The more defensively you play, I feel like he gets the advantage. But if you really go in for those attacks, you have a better chance of wearing him down. So that's kind of what I learned over the course of this game as far as the fighting goes. But the exploration, I feel like that's my favorite, because you can kind of take your time with it. And there's no real pressure or like time limit or anything. So I think that'll always be my favorite. Okay. I think that's going to wrap up our discussion of Star Wars Jedi Survivor and bring us to our final segment here on Who's the Bossk, which is called First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we talk about the media that we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. My example this week, we rewatched all of the Mission Impossible movies. We watched 1 through 6. My wife and I had seen them both. Sorry, we both had seen them all before. Enjoyed most of them on first viewing and on the rewatch, and then we went and saw the new one on, let's see, that would have been Wednesday this week, and really enjoyed that as well. I actually observed, and I will observe again, that this might be, as far as like consistent quality of storytelling, it might be one of the best movie franchises out there, just as far as like a consistency in entertaining the audience, and exactly pretty much what you're going to get, and it delivers on that every time. So go out and check out the new one's called Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. It stars Tom Cruise, as you know, directed by Christopher McQuarrie. That's my recommendation for this week. How about you, Sean? Anything that you've been reading or watching or playing outside of Star Wars? Well, any recommendations there?
Well, it's funny. I don't find myself watching a whole lot of TV these days. I end up watching a lot of YouTube, believe it or not. But I will say one thing I'm looking forward to that isn't Star Wars related is Oppenheimer, which I think came out today. I think it came out today.
I think it's next week.
Or is it next Friday? It's probably next Friday. but anyway, so that I've been looking forward to that movie ever since they first kind of promoted it. I think it was towards the end of last year or something like that. I love Cillian Murphy. He was great in Peaky Blinders, and he's been great in pretty much everything he's in. And so I would say that is probably the one thing that I'm really looking forward to most, at least in the immediacy, that isn't Star Wars related.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Christopher Nolan. I'm a big fan of his as a filmmaker, so I will be seeing. Now it comes out during Comic-Con, unfortunately, so I'll be busy that weekend. But as soon as I get the chance afterward, I'll be checking that out. And also, you got to see Barbie too, right? Like both coming out the same day.
Definitely. I mean, I'll probably see that when it goes on to whatever streaming platform it ends up going on to. But I haven't seen a movie in the theater since, well, I went and saw Return of the Jedi, and then before that, it was Rise of Skywalker. So
wow,
I am due for a non-Star Wars related film.
There you go. Oppenheimer is the one to do it, and Chris Nolan will be happy to hear that you went and saw it in the theater. His preferred method of consuming the film. So excellent choice there. That's going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of Who's the Bossk. Big thank you to my guest, Obi-Sean from the Force Dyad podcast. Sean, where can people find you on social media, and where can they find the Force Dyad podcast?
So as far as the podcast goes, you can find us on all major platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google, Audible, etc. We do have a website that you can also listen at. It's forcedyadpod.com. As far as social media is concerned, our Twitter is at Force Dyad Pod. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We do have a Threads now as well, so you can find that obviously, I think, through Instagram. I think they're all connected now. And so yeah, so that's kind of where you can find myself. John, you can find him on Twitter at Jedi John 4, because the other 3 were already taken. And so but yeah, that's kind of where you can find us on the various interwebs.
Terrific. And thanks again for coming on the show. It was a blast talking to you about Jedi Survivor.
It was great. Thank you. I appreciate it. You know, if you ever need someone to pal around with, I'm always happy to chat. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate
it. And same here. I'm always happy to make new Star Wars friends. And again, hope to run into you at Comic-Con. So next week on Who's the Bossk, I might have an interview lined up, still working on that, but I definitely will be recording an episode at San Diego Comic-Con, probably with an assortment of guests popping in on that one. So look forward to that. Otherwise, please visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. And I'm on Instagram and Threads and Twitter at Who's the Bossk Pod, although it's mostly Instagram this, you know, after the whole Twitter debacle, and trying out the Threads thing. I'm mostly talking about like movies and TV that I've consumed and comics and stuff. So Instagram is, you know what these are. Instagram, I post pictures when I go out in the world. Like tonight, I'm going to a concert. I'll Instagram it. When I see a movie, I'll talk about it on Threads. You get the idea. My name's Mike Celestino. Thank you so much out there for listening. See you next time. Bye.
See you later.
End the broadcast.